Well, today let's put the spotlight then on hotel as well as offline travel companies. Now, given the fact that they have access to a lot of consumer data via check-ins, loyalty programs, visa application requirements, etc., they are going to be impacted now due to the compliance requirements under the new Digital Personal Data Protection Act or DPDP Act. Let's understand a little bit more about the tax and the financial implications and whether or not there are going to be a lot of compliance issues. Mini Gupta, as technology partner at EY India, now joins us on the show. Mini, thanks so much for taking time out. To begin with, given that the travel and hospitality sector, as we do know already, has access to a lot of customer data, all of this now is going to come under a lot of scrutiny. Is it going to change things very rapidly? I just want to get in your overall view on this.
Sure. Hi, pleasure to be here. So definitely, if you look at the travel and hospitality sector, they deal with consumers directly. And the volumes of data that they're dealing with is also huge. So from that perspective, yes, there is implication on the sector. So far, if you look at it, the data that is collected, there could be excessive data that's collected beyond what they need purely for booking purposes or for providing the services. So one, for sure, the implication is really to identify what is the data that I really need, and am I taking consent to process that data? And of course, it's not just about taking consent, but it's also about saying, am I fulfilling that? Am I actually not using the data for anything further? So for example, as a consumer, if I've not consented to marketing offers, how do I segregate that data? How do I segregate the people who have consented versus not? Again, if they go and change their consent, how do I ensure that from that time onwards, I am servicing? So definitely a huge implication if you look at it, because now the sector will have to ensure that there is a ground for processing and they've taken that consent, if that happens to be the ground for processing. And then their systems in turn and their processes in turn. In fact, even people need to be sensitized to ensure that they are processing the data only for the purpose that they have consent for and not beyond. So huge implication, because these are setups that are online as well as physical, distributed. So it's a mammoth task.
Mini, given that under the new law, the companies will have to take explicit consent now before using the user data, there is a chance that we will see a huge digital transformation. Is that something that's going to be the big or the next wave of change that the companies will have to adapt to?
Absolutely. In fact, that's something that I have been maintaining consistently, that this is a chance for digital transformation across organizations. In fact, it's a chance for business transformation if you look at it, because now you need to ensure your entire life cycle, all your processes, whatever has personal data touch points, one, we have visibility of this. We have noted multiple organizations where the same set of data is taken through different, through different processes, while it could have been through a single point. So a case for business transformation where you might want to consolidate certain processes. You might actually want to look at doing away with some processes which really are not required, or in fact, even data minimization, because a lot of data is just collected by probably considering that we'll look at it later. But now organizations will have to ensure that they understand what's being collected and not collect what's not required. And all of this, given that we will take consent, whether it's at the front office, whether it's, when I'm sharing data across with third parties, digital ways and mechanisms will ensure that you are able to put in the required technology safeguards on the data as it goes through the life cycle. So even when it's passing within the organization, maybe for analytics purpose, maybe for any kind of insights that one needs to derive, or if it's being shared with my third-party vendors, when we do it via digital means, that's when one will be able to secure. So it's not just at the consent layer. Of course, at the consent layer, if I'm at a front desk, if I'm at an event, then rather than having paper forms and not having a trail of proper consent, one should look at enabling it through tablet apps or any other means where the notices can be put up, the consent can then be taken and recorded, and of course any changes also can be processed. So a huge change, business transformation as well as digital not only at the front end when you're taking consent, that definitely is key, but also through the life cycle as this data moves.
Okay, fair enough. Do you think that now companies will also have to sensitize their front desks on the new rules as, the sector deals with physical counters and points of sale? What's going to happen there?
Absolutely, which is what I said. It's a large change. It's a people change, and that sensitization is extremely important because while you may have put in your processes within the organization, if my front desk person is negligent while taking data, and look at a hospitality, right? They collect your ID cards. It's a government ID card. It could be Aadhaar or anything else. So it's sensitive data that they're really looking at. And those are hard copies that they take. They probably could be scanning it up. They could be photocopying it, and then it could be lying there. So how do I sensitize my front desk or even my feet on street agents is extremely important. Anybody who is coming in touch with the consumer, anybody who's coming in touch with personal data on behalf of the travel companies, the hospitality companies, be it employees or even third-party employees or contract staff, need to be sensitized about this subject. So a huge task. Ideally, as part of, if we are dealing with third-party agents and contract staff there, we should impose this as part of contracts as well, because this sensitization is not a one-time sensitization. It needs to be kind of asserted again and again to ensure that there are no slip-ups. So you will see a lot of these probably, quick mobile tutorials coming up. It's not just about, and these have to be quick. They can't be really lengthy. It has to be something that's simple, they understand, and also probably available in vernacular languages, because a lot of these front office desks, if you see, could be in smaller towns. So how do they also explain the concept to a consumer is extremely important. So the awareness is about their own sensitization. The awareness is also what they communicate to the consumer as they collect data, as they seek consent, and should be available in multiple languages as the staff, again, operates across regions, across jurisdictions.
But Mini, what I want to understand is that now that they will have to make this massive digital transformation, are there going to be any implications from a compliance standpoint, any cash flow impact in the tax laws?
So if you look at it, of course, from a compliance perspective, they will need to demonstrate compliance. If they happen to be a significant data fiduciary, which is basis the volume of data, the sensitivity of data, the risk associated, etc. So multiple parameters. And given that, the travel and hospitality companies do deal with large volumes and in some cases sensitive, some of them may qualify to be significant data fiduciaries. So in those cases, of course, there will be additional compliance requirements, in fact, in terms of having an independent data auditor, in terms of doing periodic audits, in terms of ensuring that they have a data protection officer who is based out of India and reporting to the board. So multiple aspects that come with it, and hence the onerous compliances that come along with it. And there would be a cost to compliance, obviously. There will be some heightened cost to begin with, where there could be an impact overall. But if you look at it, the endeavor should be to say, how do I make it a part of my entire process? How do I build in privacy by design in whatever we do? So the systems that they build, the applications that are being built, how do we ensure that all of those take the concepts of privacy in mind right from the word go? And that's where they will probably be able to kind of control some of these expenses as well. Like we already said, if they adopt technology, initially there could be some kind of extra outflow, but frankly, over time, that will help it become more efficient also. From an impact of tax point of view, of course, it's yet to be kind of assessed and seen how this will imply from a cash flow and tax. But yes, overall cost of compliance will go up initially, but there are efficient ways of saying how do I contain it on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so from Mini, just from the reports that we've been reading so far, it seems like, for instance, if a user wants to download a travel app, the service provider has to tell the data subject how their personal information is going to be processed, and the moment the service is already provided, they would have to erase this data. Isn't all of this just going to be very cumbersome for these travel operators?
Absolutely, it would be. See, if you look at it, one, it says that, when you collect data, you have to delete it beyond the purpose. Now, there are ways to kind of handle this. And it also says that if there is a law, by virtue of law, if you need to keep this data for longer, you can. So for tax purpose, if I need to keep data for longer, or for any regulatory aspects, I need to keep data for longer, we can, but it should be limited to the data that is required. Beyond that, of course, if you look at it, yes, data retention is something that probably organizations, specifically from a travel hospitality perspective, need to now start really focusing on, to say what data needs to be retained for how long, and how do I have technical measures in place such that if the data crosses my retention period, it is then purged. So yes, it will add, more requirements that they will need to abide by, but then it kind of also adds to better governance. The other aspect, of course, is to say that, I as a travel agency or a travel company or a hospitality company would have a loyalty program. If I do have a loyalty program, then by virtue of being part of the loyalty program, the consumer's data is something that you could probably retain for longer, as long as you've taken those consent to be telling them about the offers, to be telling them about anything that's upcoming, etc. So, if you have the consent, you can keep it longer. We just have to ensure that whatever we have the consent for, accordingly, it's being dealt with. So in the travel space, in the hospitality space, you can demonstrate that the purpose is longer if you have the consent, because the person may be revisiting, the person may leverage the services again. But if you don't have the consent and if it's very transactional, then yes, ideally, if not required from any other regulation point of view, you should be looking at how we can purge the data, and adopting technical means to purge data is really the way to go to make it more efficient and effective.
Mini, good to have you on board. Thanks so much for joining in and sharing with us the details and the implications from a tax standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and how some of these travel operators will have to deal with it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.